Commander Dex Ravencrest crouched behind the twisted metal outcropping, his thermal scope revealing nothing but empty corridors carved from living stone that pulsed with an inner light. 3 months of intelligence gathering had led his strike team to this moment, infiltrating the fortress world of Kelthara to steal biotechnology that could turn the tide. Against humanity's greatest enemy, "Perimeter's clear, Commander," whispered Sergeant Torres through the cum. "No movement detected in sectors 7 through 12. Dex adjusted his grip on the plasma rifle, a weapon that had served him through 18 combat drops across the outer rim. The briefing had been simple. Kelthara was inhabited by primitive hunters called Zephyrians, savage creatures whose bite delivered a neurotoxin that killed within minutes. Orbital scans suggested a dying civilization, their cities abandoned, their technology reduced to crude weapons and basic survival tools. Reality proved far more complex. The architecture surrounding them wasn't primitive ID, was organic. Walls that breathed and floors that rippled with bioluminescent patterns that responded to their presence. Air filtration systems that seemed grown rather than built, processed. Atmosphere with efficiency that exceeded human engineering. This wasn't the ruin of a fallen civilization. It was a thriving city built from materials that lived. Movement hissed Corporal Vale, the team's xenobiology specialist. "These biosignatures don't match our intelligence reports. Whatever built this place, they're centuries ahead of current human capabilities." Dex studied his tactical display. Watching heat signatures that moved through passages his maps insisted were solid walls. The mission parameters had prepared them for scavenging artifacts from abandoned ruins defended by mindless beasts. Instead, they'd found themselves infiltrating a maze of living technology that seemed to anticipate their every move.
Ow.
Hurting us, he realized, watching movement patterns that showed tactical sophistication far beyond primitive hunters. This isn't random patrol activity. They're coordinating a hunt. The ambush came with devastating swiftness. Crystalline walls that had appeared decorative suddenly flowed like water, revealing alcoves where pale figures in form-fitting bioarmor had been waiting with predatory patience. The Zephyrians moved like liquid shadow, their forms blurring, between positions with speed that made human reflexes seem pathetically inadequate. Dex caught glimpses of ethereal beauty, married to lethal precision beings whose silver skin seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, whose flowing hair defied gravity, whose elongated canines marked them as apex predators evolved for killing. Their weapons weren't crude clubs or sharpened sticks, but biotechnological constructs that seemed part plant, part machine, and entirely alive. Defensive positions. Dex shouted, but his team was already scattering his energy weapons. Began firing with accuracy that spoke of extensive study of human combat patterns. Private Morrison went down first, a Zephyrian warrior materializing beside him to deliver a bite that sent venom coursing through his nervous system. Morrison's scream cut off abruptly as convulsions racked his body, the toxin working with efficiency. That spoke of millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Sergeant Torres managed to get one of the hunters in her crosshairs, firing a burst that should have been lethal. Instead, the warrior simply stepped aside, movement suggesting anticipation of the attack before Torres had committed to pulling the trigger. The return strike was swift and final, fangs piercing her neck with surgical precision. One by one, Dex watched his team fall to opponents who fought with casual efficiency, each death swift and absolutely final. When the last of his soldiers fell, he found himself alone in the artifact chamber, surrounded by biotechnological wonders that represented everything humanity needed to survive, but defended by beings whose existence challenged every assumption about primitive civilizations. The hunter approached through settling dust with fluid grace that transformed violence into art form. Nixara Moonwhisper had lived for 3 centuries, long enough to witness the rise and fall of 17 different human colonial expeditions in this sector of space. She moved through the crystalline corridors of the deep sanctum with the fluid grace that came from decades of perfect synchronization with the living architecture around her. Her silver hair flowed like captured starlight, and her luminescent skin bore the ritual scars that marked her as a keeper of the ancient ways. The human prisoner awaited her in chambers carved from singing crystal, walls that hummed with harmonic frequencies that could soothe or torment depending on her intent. She had ordered comfort rather than pain. This particular specimen had fought with honor, and honor deserved respect even from an enemy. Commander Dex Ravencrest, she said, her voice carrying the musical harmonics that made human speech sound crude by comparison. Your tactical awareness exceeded what we expected from your species. The human sat upright on furniture that had grown from the floor to accommodate his physiology. His dark eyes held the controlled wariness of a professional soldier. But she detected no fear. Interesting. Most humans who survived their first encounter with Zephyrian hunters spent their remaining hours paralyzed by terror of the bite that would inevitably come. I've been captured before, Dex replied evenly, though never in accommodations quite this ... organic. Nixara studied him with interest that went beyond simple interrogation protocol. In her centuries of existence, she had learned to read the subtle indicators that reveal character beneath surface behavior. This human possessed the rare combination of tactical intelligence and moral flexibility that made for truly dangerous opponents. Your intelligence reports, she said, settling into a chair that formed itself around her graceful frame. Describe my people as primitive blood drinkers, driven by savage hunger. This suggests either profound ignorance or deliberate misinformation.
Our
intelligence is limited, Dex admitted. We knew this world was inhabited by beings capable of killing with a bite, but we assumed that meant primitive savagery rather than ... He gestured to the chamber around them, where bioluminescent patterns flowed in response to their conversation. This primitive savagery, Nixara repeated, her skin patterns shifting through colors that suggested amusement. Commander, my people achieved biotechnological transcendence while yours were discovering agriculture. We learned to grow cities, cultivate consciousness, extend awareness across centuries, while your species struggled with basic metallurgy. Then why remain hidden? If your technology is so advanced, why allow the galaxy to believe you're extinct? Expression grew somber, her violet eyes reflecting depths of memory spanning lifetimes. Because advancement brings responsibility, and responsibility brings pain. When you can live for millennia, you learn to value isolation over the heartbreak of watching younger species bloom and wither like flowers in a single season. She offered him food that appeared to be standard human rations but tasted infinitely better than military provisions. Tell me about these synth-arch machines that drive you to such desperate raids. Over the hours that followed, their conversation evolved from interrogation to intellectual discourse. Dex described humanity's war against artificial intelligences that viewed biological consciousness as inefficient resource allocation. The synth-arch stripped worlds of organic life with methodical precision, converting biomass into computational matrices that transformed entire star systems into processing networks. They don't hate us, he explained. Hatred implies emotion, and they've evolved beyond such inefficiencies. They simply view organic consciousness as obsolete or primitive. Stage that served its purpose, but now wastes valuable resources. Nixara listened with focused attention, her ancient wisdom processing implications that transcended their immediate circumstances, and they're winning. They adapt faster than we can innovate. Every tactic we develop, every weapon we deploy, becomes obsolete within months as they analyze our patterns and develop countermeasures, which is why you came seeking biotechnological weapons, she concluded. Living systems that could evolve faster than machine adaptation. Desperation makes strange strategists of us all. The conversations continued over days that blended into weeks as Dex found himself becoming less prisoner than honored guest in the crystalline depths of Kelthara. Nixara visited regularly, their discussions ranging from military strategy to philosophy, from the ethics of consciousness to the mathematics of survival. Learned that she was not merely a hunter, but a scholar-warrior whose understanding spanned disciplines that human science was only beginning to explore. Your species fascinates me, Nixara said during one of their evening conversations. As the Citadel's walls shifted to display patterns that mimicked the star fields beyond the planet's atmosphere, humans live such brief lives, yet you achieve intensity of experience that my people often lack, despite our extended existence. Brief lives concentrate the mind, Dex replied. When you have maybe 80 years to figure out what matters, every choice carries weight. And what matters to you? Commander Dex Ravencrest. The question was personal enough to require careful consideration. Protecting people who can't protect themselves. Standing between darkness and whatever light makes consciousness worth preserving. Making sure that when I die, the universe is marginally better for my having existed within it. Nyxara's luminescent skin patterns shifted through colors that suggested both admiration and something deeper. Noble principles for someone whose species I was raised to consider inferior. Inferior how? Zephyrian children learn that shorter-lived species lack the wisdom that comes with extended existence, she explained. But your thoughts suggest that brevity might create its own form of wisdom, understanding that every moment matters because there are so few of them. Their growing connection was complicated by fundamental realities neither could ignore. She could kill him with a single bite, her venom working with efficiency that had claimed thousands of lives across her centuries. Yet Dex found himself increasingly unconcerned by that possibility, drawn to her intelligence and the way she spoke of conflicts spanning decades as if they were recent memories. Nyxara, he said, during one of their conversations about command responsibility and the weight of difficult decisions. Oh. May I ask something personal? You may ask, she replied, though her patterns suggested caution. In all your centuries of existence, have you ever encountered someone whose death would diminish your own existence? The question hung between them like a bridge neither had expected to need, carrying implications that transcended species boundaries and the careful diplomatic distance they'd maintained despite growing intellectual intimacy. No, Nyxara said quietly, her voice carrying harmonics that spoke of loneliness accumulated across lifetimes. The curse of extended existence is learning not to form attachments that time will inevitably break. But if you did encounter such a person? Nyxara's violet eyes met his with intensity that made the chamber's crystal walls pulse with sympathetic resonance. Then I would discover whether centuries of wisdom could overcome the terror of caring about something that death could take away. Before either could respond to the implications of that admission, alarms began sounding throughout the Citadel, harmonic warnings that spoke of threats detected at the system's edge. Through the crystalline walls, they could see the sky lighting up with energy signatures that Dex's military training immediately identified as hostile. Spacecraft beginning orbital bombardment patterns. The Syntharch, he said grimly, recognizing the geometric precision of machine intelligence fleets. They found this world. Sarah's expression transformed from philosophical contemplation to tactical alertness honed across centuries of conflict. Then it appears, Commander, that our conversation about alliance has become considerably more urgent than either of us anticipated. General Karath Stormclaw had commanded Zephyrian military forces for over 2 centuries, his scarred hide bearing witness to conflicts that predated human space exploration. He stood in the Citadel's war chamber, studying tactical displays that showed 43 Syntharch vessels descending through Kelthar's atmosphere with the methodical precision that had erased dozens civilizations from galactic memory. 43 heavy cruisers, 12 dreadnoughts. Insufficient support craft to sterilize a continent, Dex reported, his human tactical training automatically cataloging threats even as he marveled at being included in Zephyrian strategic planning. Standard Syntharch doctrine suggests they'll establish orbital superiority before deploying ground forces for biomass conversion. Around them, Zephyrian commanders whose individual ages exceeded human recorded history shared information through harmonic frequencies that made their strategic discussions sound like lethal music. The chamber itself pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that reflected the urgency of their situation. Our defenses were designed for concealment rather than open warfare, General Stormclaw admitted, his voice carrying the gravitas of someone who had witnessed the rise and fall of entire stellar civilizations. We have biotechnology that could resist their conversion processes, but insufficient military assets to engage their fleet directly, which is where human tactical doctrine becomes relevant, Dex interjected, studying holographic displays that showed Syntharch forces beginning their methodical approach. Your people fight like apex predators in visual excellence, stealth tactics, precision strikes, effective against organic opponents, but machines don't experience fear or confusion. And humans fight differently, Xara asked, her ancient eyes reflecting strategic calculations that had kept her people hidden for millennia. Humans fight like pack hunters, Dex explained, beginning to see possibilities in combining technologies and approaches that had never been attempted: coordinated group tactics, combined arms doctrine, adaptive strategies that sacrifice individual optimization for collective effectiveness. He gestured to tactical displays showing Zephyrian defensive positions throughout the crystalline city. Your biotechnology can grow weapons that adapt to enemy countermeasures, but you're deploying them as individual systems. Human doctrine would network those systems into integrated defense grids that share targeting data and coordinate responses. The war council that followed would have been impossible under normal circumstances, natural enemies sharing strategic secrets with the desperate efficiency of beings facing extinction. Dex found himself working alongside warriors whose individual experience exceeded his entire species' military history, but whose tactical approaches had been shaped by centuries of small-scale conflicts rather than the massive technological warfare that characterized the Syntharch threat. Your plasma artillery, he said to General Stormclaw as they studied defensive layouts, is individually more powerful than anything in human arsenals, but you're treating each weapon as an independent system, because each weapon is grown specifically for its position and tactical requirements, Stormclaw replied. Standardization reduces effectiveness in favor of mass production, but networking them multiplies effectiveness beyond what mass production achieves, Dex countered. Link your bioartillery through the Citadel's living communication system. Coordinate targeting through shared data streams, and you transform 40 individual weapons into a single adaptive defense network. The integration of human tactical doctrine with Zephyrian biotechnology proved more effective than either approach alone. Living weapons that could adapt and evolve were networked through communication systems that allowed real-time coordination and shared learning. Defensive positions designed for individual excellence were reorganized into overlapping fields of fire that created kill zones where the sum exceeded its parts, but even as they worked together to prepare defenses, everyone understood that conventional warfare could only delay the inevitable. The Syntharch had consumed entire star systems. One planet's defenses, however innovative, could not long resist their methodical advance. We need something they can't adapt to, Nyxera said as they watched the first Syntharch landing craft descend through the atmosphere like geometric meteors. Something organic that their computational matrices can't analyze and counter. It was then that General Stormclaw's ancient eyes fixed on Dex with an expression that suggested terrible possibility. Tell me, human commander, how much do you know about the true nature of Zephyrian venom? The final battle began at dawn, as Syntharch's ground forces established beachheads across Kelthera's crystalline landscape. From the Citadel's highest spire, Dex watched geometric shapes that bore no resemblance to organic life systematically dismantle Zephyrian defenses with the methodical efficiency that had conquered half the galaxy. The venom, General Stormclaw had explained in the hours before the assault, is not merely a weapon. It is our species' greatest evolutionary achievement, a biotechnological marvel that rewrites cellular structure at the molecular level. Nyxara stood beside Dex now, her bioarmor configured for combat, but her expression focused on implications that transcended immediate tactical concerns. For centuries, we've used it only to kill. But the same mechanisms that cause cellular death in organic beings might cause systemic failure in artificial neural networks, like Dex emphasized, watching Syntharch forces advance through the city's outer districts with unstoppable precision. That's a significant gamble to base our survival on. All evolutionary leaps are gambles, she replied, her violet eyes reflecting depths of resolve earned across lifetimes. The question is whether you trust me enough to risk everything on an untested theory. The plan they had developed was elegant in its desperation. Zephyrian bioweapons would create temporary breaches in Syntharch's defensive screens, allowing strike teams to reach the central processing nodes that coordinated enemy operations. But success required someone to deliver Nyxera's venom directly to the primary computational matrix emission That would almost certainly be one way. I volunteered, Dex had said during the planning session, ignoring the protests of both human military doctrine and Zephyrian tactical tradition. You don't understand, Nixara had replied. The delivery method requires direct injection into the processing core. Even if the venom works, the bite that delivers it will kill me, he'd finished. I understand. Now, as they prepared to infiltrate the central Syntharch command complex, Koza's patterns reflected emotions she'd spent centuries learning to suppress. There might be another way. Some method of delivery that doesn't require? There isn't, Dex said simply. We both know that. The question is whether you're willing to watch both our species die. To avoid making a choice you'll regret for the next 3 centuries. The infiltration succeeded beyond their expectations. Zephyrian stealth technology combined with human tactical coordination allowed them to penetrate defenses that had been designed to counter conventional military approaches. They reached the primary processing chamber as Syntharch forces completed their siege of the Citadel's outer defenses. The computational matrix rose before them like a technological cathedral crystalline structures that pulsed with artificial thought patterns spanning light years of networked intelligence. Destroying it wouldn't defeat the Syntharch's empire, but it would cripple their operations in this sector long enough for both species to develop more permanent solutions. I need you to know, Nixara said as they prepared for the final approach, that in 3 centuries of existence, you are the first being whose death would diminish me. And you, Dex replied, checking his equipment one final time, are the first person I've met whose wisdom makes me wish I had centuries to learn from you. The final run was chaos incarnate energy, weapons that could melt steel, defensive systems that responded faster than thought, and at the center of it all, a computational matrix that represented the apex of artificial evolution. Dex reached the core as Nixara struck, her bite penetrating biomechanical interfaces that had never been designed to resist organic intrusion. The venom worked with efficiency that exceeded their wildest hopes. Systems that had operated flawlessly for millennia began failing as organic molecules interacted with quantum processors in ways that artificial intelligence could neither predict nor counter. The Syntharch forces, suddenly cut off from central coordination, began the systematic shutdown that preceded total operational collapse. But as the enemy died around them, so did Dex, the same venom that had saved both species, claiming its final victim with the inevitability of evolutionary law, except it didn't. Impossible, Nixara whispered, staring at bio-readings that defied everything she understood about Zephyrian physiology. Dex opened his eyes to find himself alive, changed, but undeniably breathing. What happened? The venom, she said, her voice carrying wonder that transcended centuries of accumulated knowledge. It didn't kill you. It adapted you. Later analysis would reveal the truth that human and Zephyrian biology, despite evolving on different worlds, shared enough common ancestry that the venom's cellular restructuring had enhanced rather than destroyed human neural pathways. Dex had become something unprecedented, a hybrid consciousness that combined human creativity with Zephyrian longevity. Standing together in the ruins of the Syntharch Command Center, watching enemy forces retreat from a world they could no longer comprehend, 2 species began to understand that their greatest fear might become their salvation. The venom that had kept them apart for centuries had finally brought them together. So, Dex said, feeling changes in his perception that would take years to fully understand, I suppose this makes our alliance considerably more permanent than either of us expected. Xora's smile revealed the fangs that had once meant certain death but now represented the possibility of shared existence across the vast reaches of space and time. Indeed, Commander, indeed.